Chapter 7. Fight to protect or possess. The man with blood-red eyes watched the two from high above. He lowered his gun to his side but his finger remained on the trigger. Cloud found himself reaching for the sword on his back. He grabbed the hilt but he did not unsheath it right away. "Who are you?" Cloud asked. The man remained high in the rafters, his face so pale that even in the shadows Cloud could see him. His black hair that hung loose around his face made him even more paler, as well as the black clothes he wore under his red cloak. "Vincent Valentine," he said. Cloud swallowed a lump that had formed in his throat. This man, Vincent, seemed as if he walked right out of a horror movie. His stoic nature made Cloud edgy. "Why do you want Aerith?" Vincent's eyes narrowed. "None of your business." Cloud looked over at Aerith. She returned his look with a little shrug before returning her gaze to Vincent. "I won't let you take Aerith," Cloud replied, his grip on the hilt tightening. "Enough talk!" Vincent snapped. He jumped from the rafters and sent several bullets at Cloud. Cloud blocked the bullets with his sword just as Vincent jumped over him and landed behind him. He grabbed Cloud with his hand that was encased in a golden claw and threw him against a pillar. Cloud felt the wind be knocked out of him. He recovered quickly. If he had not, he would have been riddled with more bullets. The sound of clicking was heard and the gunman had to reload. Cloud saw his chance. Charging at him, Cloud took a swipe at him but Vincent gracefully jumped over him and landed behind him. He twisted and finished reloading his gun before firing another bullet. The blonde ducked and charged again. From behind a pillar Aerith watched the fight. A frown sat on her face as she turned to look behind her. She nodded her head when the sound of more bullets ringing through the church forced her to return to the fight. Cloud growled as he felt a bullet graze the side of his arm. It burned but the wound was minimal. Clicking could be heard again. Vincent needed to reload. Cloud, however, would not allow it. Charging once more, he slashed at Vincent. Vincent found himself dropping his gun before forcing him to catch Cloud's sword with his clawed hand. The weight of the sword forced the gunman instantly his knees. Cloud kept the weight on him, hoping it would force him to submission. "Why do you want Aerith?" Vincent's blood-red eyes looked up at him. "Why do you want her? What's so precious to you that you need her?" Cloud looked confused. Vincent saw the minor distraction and used it to kick Cloud's knee, making him lose his balance and sending him to the ground. "What I want, what everyone wants is one and the same," Vincent growled, reloading his gun. Cloud groaned, opening his eyes. He looked up and saw the barrel of Vincent's gun aiming straight at him. "What I want is the same as you. Once she is under my possession I will get my precious desire. But that's," Cloud bit out, "is not what I want. I don't want to possess Aerith. I want to protect her." Cloud kicked the gun and in doing so made Vincent fire aimlessly in the air. Cloud then swept his feet from under the gunman before getting up. This time it was Vincent's turn to lay on the ground, Cloud's sword hovering over his throat. Aerith appeared from behind the pillar. Both Cloud and Vincent looked at her. She nodded toward Cloud. Vincent let out a low noise of annoyance and possibly despair. "Kill me then," Vincent said. He knew he had lost. Cloud looked mildly shocked. "What? What's the point of living if all I live in is despair? I was so close for redemption. I was so close to finding my salvation. And you think Aerith would be your salvation? She is salvation." Vincent closed his eyes. "Please be quick." Cloud removed his sword. "I am not going to kill you. I won the fight. If you think ending your life will offer you any peace, it won't. It's a coward's way out. Whatever it is that you are searching for to redeem yourself, find it on your own. Aerith isn't yours or mine." Cloud looked at Aerith, who looked almost as if she were brought to tears. Cloud moved toward her when someone stepped out from behind her, almost as if she appeared out of thin air. Cloud stopped short and noticed a petite girl with short cropped black hair standing next to Aerith. In her hands she held a large shuriken. "Hey," she greeted almost cheerfully. "You look exhausted after that fight." Cloud tensed. He eyed her carefully before noticing Aerith moving away, her hands coming up to her chest. Cloud eyes widened slightly, realizing what was going to happen. The girl lunged at him with her weapon, striking at Cloud. Cloud defended himself, surprising the girl that he was able to lift such a large sword to avoid her attack. The blonde-haired man quickly went on the offensive and swiped at her. She did a backflip and grinned. Cloud tried to side-swipe her, but the girl simply disappeared in a puff of smoke, causing Cloud to hit air. He scanned the area looking at her, when something sharp hit the back of his leg. Cloud winced and noticed a star-shaped blade sticking out. Cringing, he yanked it out and dropped the star on the floor. "Am I too fast for you?" He looked up and saw the girl in the rafters. She was sitting down, a huge grin still on her face. "Who are you?" Cloud demanded, wanting to know who he was fighting because it did not take him a second to realize why he was fighting her. She flipped over the rafters, giggling as she did, but instead of landing on the ground she once again disappeared from view, but not before sending another blade at her opponent. Cloud dodged them and scanned the church for her again. "Over here!" she called, sitting on a pew, legs crossed and arms behind her head. Cloud jumped at her, intending to swipe at her from above. She stared at him unafraid, before once again disappearing in a puff of smoke. Cloud landed on the pew where she had once been, sword outstretched. How was she doing this? Did she have the power to vanish and appear at will? No, this had to be some sort of trick. However, his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden pressure on his back. Cloud cringed as he felt something rip through his back. Then it was pulled out. Cloud sucked in a sharp breath as pain erupted throughout his body. "My name," the girl whispered in his ear from behind him, "is Yuffie. Aerith is going to belong to me, but I'm sure you already knew that." Blindly, Cloud spun around, intending to do some sort of spin attack, but Yuffie jumped out of harm's way. "I'll tell you what I told Vincent," he snapped. "Aerith belongs to no one." Anger boiled over on Cloud, making him rage the more these people insisted Aerith was some sort of property. The idea was appalling and something deep within him resented it. Charging, he once again went to attack Yuffie, but she disappeared yet again in her puff of smoke. Confusion hit Cloud. He needed to figure out how she was doing this. It was her great advantage and she was using it to defeat him. Well, she would try. He turned around and instantly blocked Yuffie from hitting him. She gasped and did quickly flipped back and Cloud leaped at her, but she once again disappeared from sight. Cloud stared at the ground and his eyes widened slightly. He turned around and dodged an onslaught of Yuffie's ninja stars, which ended up embedded into a pillar. He then flung his sword aimlessly into the air as if hoping to strike Yuffie blindly, but the sword completely missed her. It flew into the rafters before sailing back down and landing with a dull thud. Yuffie started laughing. "Am I so intimidating that I'm scaring you so much you can't even fight?" "Terrified," Cloud said dryly. Yuffie puffed out her cheeks, annoyed that he was not the least bit intimidated by her. "I'll show you!" she yelled, throwing her weapon at him. Cloud slid across the wooden planks and then rolled across the ground to retrieve his sword. Once he retrieved it, he spun around to meet Yuffie head-on. The quick power struggle ended with Cloud pushing Yuffie away. Flipping into the air, she once again disappeared. Cloud smirked and then put his sword away. Aerith, who was watching along with Vincent, seemed utterly confused why Cloud would put his weapon away. However, before she could even say a word, a loud cracking echoed in the church, followed by a crash. Aerith let out a gasp as she saw a beam collapse on several rows of church pews. When the dust settled, a loud moan could be heard. Cloud walked over with Vincent and Aerith closed behind. Cloud looked down and found Yuffie on top of broken beam and splintered pews. When she finally regained herself, she looked up at the three. A frown spread on Yuffie's face, her eyebrows knitting together. "You figured it out," Vincent commented quietly. "How did she?" Aerith began. She was using the smoke as a distraction. I had finally noticed her shadow moving above me and realized she was jumping up into the rafters to get behind me. Cloud explained but suddenly bowed his head to Aerith. The young woman looked taken aback. I'm sorry about causing such a mess of things, he apologized sincerely. Aerith smiled. No harm done, Cloud, the flowers are all right. That's all that matters. Yuffie picked herself up, muttering to herself out of anger. Vincent ignored it, turned around to leave the church. Cloud looked over at him and called out to him. He stopped but did not turn around. Why do you want Aerith? Cloud asked again. How did you know I came to possess her? Vincent smirked. Once you defeated Kadaj, we were allowed to participate again. Again? Cloud thought, bewildered. They had fought over her before? Since we lost, again, we'll have to wait for the cycle to begin again. What are you talking about? Cloud demanded. Vincent looked at Cloud out of the corner of his eye. Anger was surging through Cloud. More riddles for answers instead of things that made sense to him. Why all the riddles? Could someone in this world make any sense? I hope you lose possession of her, Vincent said honestly, even if it was a cruel thing to say. I want one more chance. Had you not shown up, I think Kadaj would have won. Won what? The only thing everyone who comes to this church wants. Cloud looked at Aerith, who was looking away. I get it that you and everyone else I fought wants Aerith, but that doesn't answer my question. Why? Vincent closed his eyes. My reasons are my own. With that he took his leave. Cloud turned to ask Yuffie the same question, but she had already disappeared, mad that she too had lost again. Cloud turned back to the door and Vincent was also gone. Once again it was just him and Aerith. The two looked at one another. Aerith frowned. We should get you to your home, she said softly. You are injured. Cloud nodded. At his apartment, Aerith was cleaning Cloud's wounds. The sword laid against the wall next to some of his many boxes which he yet had to unpack. He wanted to object, but she insisted, silencing him with one of her smiles. She cleaned them and luckily none of them were serious and no bleeding continued. When she finished, Aerith stood up and nodded to him. Aerith, Cloud said softly. Yes. Why do they want you? Vincent, Yuffie, Kadaj, all three of them wanted to possess you. Aerith shrugged. I do not know. As Vincent said, his reasons are his own and I am sure the others are the same. Cloud frowned. That was not the answer he was expecting. He could not tell if the brunette was lying or if what she said was true. She seemed to dismiss his question. Vincent said that there are others. Yes, that's right, she confirmed. How many? How many? How many more people are after you? Oh, however many people wish to possess me. Cloud let out a sound within his throat, a mix between annoyance and anger. Aerith tilted her head. If I were to lose? Cloud said carefully. Aerith instantly frowned. What would happen? Did you not listen to Vincent? Aerith asked. The cycle would repeat with the victor. The person who is the winner must defeat everyone who wishes to possess me. That is, if you lose, you won't lose, will you, Cloud? Cloud could hear the hint of fear in her voice. Something in the back of her eyes flickered and it made Cloud's insides twist in pain. No, he firmly said, hoping it would reassure her. Perhaps if he defeated everyone, Aerith would be free. He did not wish to possess her, something he made very clear to everyone who assumed he did, even Aerith herself. Maybe that is why wanted him to win. Maybe if he did she would be set free from whatever this twisted game everyone was playing with her life. He wanted it to be true. The smile spread across her lips and she turned away. She smiled all the time, but there were moments, small ones that happen at the briefest of times, where Cloud saw a distant look in Aerith's eyes. He had seen it before, as if she is remembering something or thinking about something that could very well bring the girl to tears. Yet, when interrupted she seemed to avert back to the smiling woman that seemed so light-hearted and carefree. Aerith, Cloud said. Will you smile for me? The girl looked puzzled. She gave him a smile but Cloud shook his head. He walked up to her and placed a hand on her cheek. The girl's eyes widened. A real smile, one that doesn't look like you are trying so hard not to cry. Aerith breathed, feeling her defense break. Sometimes, it's hard to smile, she whispered. But you don't have to worry about me, Cloud. The game is not over, there are others you will fight. They will come for you, Cloud, be careful. They will try and take advantage of your injuries. Cloud dropped his hand, his eyes widened. Aerith touched Cloud's arm that still had her ribbon wrapped around it. You should, redress that. She turned away and headed for the door. I'll be going now. Aerith said, smiling. It was the same painful smile and it tugged on Cloud's heartstrings. How could someone pretend to be so strong? The door opened and Aerith would have closed it but Cloud rushed forward to grab hold of it. It's dangerous out there, Cloud said. Let me take you home. Aerith looked at him. She nodded and Cloud followed her out the door. The blonde-haired man walked with her out of his apartment in silence. Outside, the air was crisp and cool. Cloud wondered how the day could pass by so fast. It was already evening, nearing nighttime. The lights were already on, lighting up the city. Aerith walked ahead of him a bit, stretching her arms in the air and laughing. She turned around to look at Cloud. Cloud smiled at her. It's a beautiful evening, she said. I bet, you could see the stars if city wasn't so bright. Have you ever seen the stars? Cloud asked. Once. She answered softly. Have you? Something within Cloud stirred. I've always been able to see the stars in Nibelheim. It's a small village, no bright lights like here. She turned from him and that distant look in Aerith's eyes appeared. I bet it is beautiful. She looked back at him and suddenly her eyes widened. Cloud. Behind you. Cloud spun around and in the same instant dove to the side just as a spear came out of nowhere, with the intention of running through him. Cloud sucked in a breath. I was wonder how fast you were. Had to beat the kid, the gunman, and the lunatic. Kid, gunman, lunatic. Yuffie, Vincent, and Cottage. Cloud thought. Then he cursed through his teeth. Who are you? Why are you after Aerith? Shut the hell up. The voice snapped. Do you have to pry into everyone's damn life? Mind your own damn business. Cloud winced as the guy said a few more choice words. He guessed this guy was more sensitive about his reasoning to acquire Aerith. If you want Aerith, then you have to go through me. Cloud said. Suddenly a light flickered. Cloud squinted and watched as a man brought a lighter to a cigarette that hung between his lips. The man lit his cigarette and took a big puff before exhaling a smoke ring. You are the twerp I have to beat. He said taking another puff. The name is Cid and if you're ready to fight. I am ready. Cloud yelled. Aerith cried out, Cloud no. Too late he agreed. Cid ran from his spot and picked up his spear. Cloud reached around his back and grasped thin air. His eye went small. The sword, his weapon, was back at his apartment. To be continued.